Hello, my name is Gary, and I was raised in the western United States, so I'm a native English speaker. I hope that you will enjoy this YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us. Napoleon Hill's Golden Rules, 1883 to 1970, book review. How to get the most from reading this book. The R2A2 formula. The formula will tell you not only what to do, but how to do it. If you're ready to use the R2A2 formula, here are two principles that will assure your success. 1. Recognize, relate, assimilate, and apply principles, techniques, and methods from what you see, hear, read, and experience that can help you attain your goals. This is called the R2A2 formula. The R2 stands for recognize and relate, and A2 for assimilate and apply. 2. Direct your thoughts, control your emotions, and ordain your destiny by motivating yourself at will to achieve worthwhile goals. In using the formula, keep your goals in mind and be ready to accept useful information. As you read and apply the R2A2 formula, remember that the second part of the formula is the most important point. This part, many people hurry over and tend to avoid. These are the same people who make excuses or blame others for their lack of success. Without action, the material will not be worth the price you pay for any self-help book. Chapter 1, Your Social and Physical Heredity. Your parents made you what you are physically, but you can make yourself what you will mentally. You and every other human being are the sum total of just two things, heredity and environment. You inherited certain physical tendencies and qualities from your parents. A small, weak body may be made to house a great mind by properly directing that mind through social heredity. On the other hand, a strong physical body may house a weak, inactive mind through the same cause. The mind resembles a fertile field. It will produce a crop according to the nature of the seed that is sown in it, through the sense impressions which reach it. By controlling four sources, the ideal of a nation or a people can be completely changed or even supplanted by a new ideal in one generation. These four sources are 1. The home teachings, 2. The church teachings, 3. The public school teachings, and 4. The newspapers, magazines, and books. Summarizing, you are the sum total of just two factors, heredity and environment. You can't help how you were born, but you can build up your strong traits and overcome your weak ones. And you can change your environment, your thoughts, your purpose, your life aim. It's up to you. Do you want to? Then you can. Chapter 2, Autosuggestion. The term autosuggestion simply means self-suggestion, suggestion which one deliberately makes to oneself. James Allen said, "They themselves are makers of themselves, by virtue of the thoughts which they choose and encourage." How to develop character through autosuggestion. When we first commenced to understand the principle of autosuggestion several years ago, we adopted a plan for making practical use of it in developing certain qualities which we admired in certain men who are familiar characters in history. These. Just before going to sleep at night, we made it a practice to close our eyes and see in our imagination a large council table standing on the floor in front of us. We then pictured in our imagination certain men seated around that table, those men from whose characters and lives we wish to appropriate certain qualities to be deliberately built into our own character through the principle of autosuggestion. For example, some of the men whom we selected to take an imaginary place at the imaginary council table were Lincoln, Emerson, Socrates, Aristotle, Napoleon, Jefferson, Albert Hubbard, the man from Galilee, and Henry Ward Beecher, the well-known English orator. Our purpose was to impress our subconscious mind through autosuggestion, with the thought that we were developing certain qualities which we admired most in each of these and in other great men, the value of a definite aim in life, I am convinced that if a man's plans are based upon sound economic principles, if they are fair and just to all whom they affect, and if the man himself can throw behind those plans the dynamic force of character and belief in self that grows out of the transactions which have always satisfied his own conscience, he will ride on to success with and by the aid of a tremendous current of force which no power on earth can stop, a force which but few can correctly interpret or understand. The mind resembles a rich garden spot in that it will grow a crop of outward, physical, bodily activity which corresponds exactly to the nature of the thoughts that dominate the mind. Whether those thoughts are deliberately placed there and held until they take root and grow, or merely drift in as so many stragglers, taking up their abode without invitation, there is no escape from the effects of one's dominating thoughts. There is no possibility of thinking of failure, poverty, and discouragement, and at the same time enjoying success, wealth, and courage. Your own mind is the magnet which attracts to you those with whom you associate most closely, the station in life you hold. Therefore, it is within your province to magnetize that mind only with thoughts that will attract the sort of people with whom you wish to associate and the station in life to which you are willing to attain. Chapter 3. Suggestion. Suggestion is a principle of psychology through the correct use of which we may influence, direct, and control the minds of others. Suggestion differs from autosuggestion in only one way. We use it to influence the minds of others, while we use autosuggestion in influencing our own minds. On numerous occasions, I have demonstrated the remarkable power of suggestion in the following manner. Before my classes in applied psychology, taking a 2-ounce bottle labeled oil of peppermint, I make a brief explanation that I wish to demonstrate the power of smell. Then, holding the bottle in front of my class so all may see it, I explain that it contains oil of peppermint, and that a few drops of it poured on a handkerchief, which I hold in my hand, will penetrate the farthest end of the room in about 40 seconds. I then uncork the bottle and pour a few drops on my handkerchief, at the same time turning my face out of shape to indicate that I have had too strong a draught of the odor. I then request the members of the class to hold up their hands as fast as they get the first whiff of the odor of the peppermint. The hands begin to go up rapidly until, in some instances, 75% of the class have their hands up. I then take the bottle and explain that it contained pure water. No one smelled any peppermint at all. It was an olfactory illusion, produced entirely through the principle of suggestion. Place in a man's mind, through the principle of suggestion, the ambition to succeed in any undertaking, and you will see that man's latent ability aroused and his powers automatically increased. Plant in your boy's mind, through the principles of suggestion, the ambience to become a successful lawyer, doctor, engineer, or businessman, and if you keep away all counter-influences, you will see that boy reach the desired goal. It is much easier to influence a child through suggestion than it is an adult, for the reason that in the mind of a child there are not so many opposing influences to break down in the process of neutralizing the mind. In the principle of suggestion lies the great roadway to success in the organization and management of men. The superintendent, foreman, manager, or president of an organization who fails to understand and use this principle is depriving himself of the most powerful force through which to influence his men. One of the most able and efficient managers that I ever knew was a man who never criticized one of his men. To the contrary, he constantly reminded them of how well they were doing. He made a practice of going among his men, stopping here and there to lay a hand on a man's shoulder and compliment him on the manner in which he was improving. It made no difference how poor a man's work was. This manager never reprimanded him. By constantly placing in the minds of his men, through the principle of suggestion, the thought that they are improving, they caught the suggestion and were promptly and effectively influenced by it. One day, the manager stopped by the workbench of a man whose record showed that his work was decreasing in quantity. The man was working on piecework. Laying his hand on this man's shoulder, he said, "Jim, I believe you are doing much better work than you were last week. You seem to be setting the other boys a lively pace. I'm glad to see this. Go to it, my boy. I'm with you to the end." This happened about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That night, Jim's tally sheet showed that he had actually turned out 25% more work than he had done the day before. If any man doubts that wonders can be performed through the principle of suggestion, it is because he has not given enough time to the study of the principle to understand it. Have you noticed that the friendly, enthusiastic, breezy, talkative, hail fellow, well met type of person gets along better than the more sedate as a leader of men in any undertaking? Surely you must have noticed that the grouchy, sullen, non-communicative sort of person never succeeds in attracting people to him or influencing them to do his bidding. The principle of suggestion is at work constantly, whether we are aware of it or not. Through this principle, which is as immutable as the law of gravitation, we are constantly influencing those around us and causing them to absorb the spirit which we radiate and to reflect the spirit in everything they do. Surely you have noticed how one disgruntled person will cast a shadow of discontent over those with whom he associates. One agitator or troublemaker can disrupt a whole force of workmen and soon render their services worthless. On the other hand, one cheerful, optimistic, loyal, and enthusiastic person will influence a whole organization and inoculate it with the spirit which he manifests. The man who begins his statement with, "As you of course know, Mr. Smith," instead of, "Let me tell you something you do not know, Mr. Smith," is a salesman who knows how to make use of the principle of suggestion. One of the cleverest and most able salesmen I ever knew was a man who rarely took credit for any information that he passed on to his prospective buyers. It was always, "As you of course already know, so-and-so." Chapter 4. The Law of Retaliation. The human mind resembles Mother Earth in that it will produce that which is planted in it through the 5 physical senses. The preponderance of tendencies upon the part of the mind is to retaliate in kind, reciprocating all acts of kindness and resenting all acts of injustices and unkindness. You know what retaliate means? In the sense that we are using it here, it means to return like for like, and not merely to avenge or to seek revenge, as is commonly meant by the use of the word. If I do you an injury, you retaliate at first opportunity. If I say unjust things about you, you will retaliate in kind, even in greater measure. On the other hand, if I do you a favor, you will reciprocate even in greater measure if possible. Thus we are following the impulse of our nature through the law of retaliation. Through the proper use of this law, I can get you to do whatever I wish you to do. If I wish you to dislike me and to lend your influence toward damaging me, I can accomplish this result by inflicting upon you the sort of treatment that I want you to afflict upon me through retaliation. If I wish your respect, your friendship, and your cooperation, I can get these by extending to you my friendship and cooperation. On these statements, I know that we are together. You can compare these statements with your own experience, and you will see how beautifully they harmonize. How often have you heard the remark, "What a wonderful personality that person has"? How often have you met people whose personalities you coveted? The man who attracts you to him through his pleasing personality is merely making use of the law of harmonious attraction or the law of retaliation, both of which, when analyzed, mean that like attracts like. If you will study, understand, and make intelligent use of the law of retaliation, you will be an efficient and successful salesman. When you have mastered the simple law and learned how to use it, you will have learned all that can be learned about salesmanship. Like attracts like. There's no denying this. Literally speaking, every person with whom you come in contact is a mental looking glass in which you may see a perfect reflection of your own mental attitude. How true it is that we receive only that which we give. It is not that which we wish for that comes back to us, but that which we give. I implore you to make use of this law, not alone for material gain, but better still for the attainment of happiness and goodwill toward men. This, after all, is the only real success for which to strive. Chapter 5. The Power of Your Mind. The human mind is a composite of many qualities and tendencies. It consists of likes and dislikes, optimism and pessimism, hatred and love, constructiveness and destructiveness, kindness and cruelty. The mind is made up of all these qualities and more. It is a blending of them all, some minds showing one of these qualities dominating and other minds showing others dominating. Learn how to use that wonderful mind of yours. A thought is like a seed planted in the ground, in that it brings back a crop after its kind, multiplies, and grows. Therefore, it is dangerous to allow the mind to hold any thought which is destructive.
Such thoughts must sooner or later seek release through physical action. The human mind can rid itself of its destructive tendencies by constantly dwelling upon its constructive tendencies. The qualities of the human mind need the sunlight of nourishment and use to keep them alive. Throughout the universe, there is a law of nourishment and the use which applies to everything that lives and grows. This law has decreed that every living thing which is neither nourished nor used must die, and this applies to the qualities of the human mind which we have mentioned. The only way to develop any quality of the mind is to concentrate upon it, think about it, and use it. Evil tendencies of the mind can be blotted out by starving them to death through disuse. You do not need the assistance of any person on earth in the manipulation of your own mind, so it will function as you want it to. Your mind is something which you control, no matter what your station in life may be, provided always that you exercise the right instead of permitting others to do so for you. Learn something of the powers of your mind. It will free you of the curse of fear and fill you with inspiration and courage. How to attract people to you through the law of retaliation. To achieve fame or accumulate a big fortune requires the cooperation of your fellow men. Whatever position one holds and whatever fortune one acquires must, to be permanent, be by sufferance of one's fellow men. You could no more remain in a position of honor without the goodwill of the neighborhood than you could fly to the moon, and as for holding a big fortune without the consent of your fellow men, it would be impossible not only to hold it, but to acquire it in the first place, except by inheritance. The peaceful enjoyment of money or position surely depends upon the extent to which you attract people to you. The roadway, then, to fame and fortune, or either leads straight through the hearts of one's fellow men. Antagonize a person, and as surely as 2 and 2 are 4, that person will retaliate in kind. Befriend a person, or confer upon him some act of kindness, and he will also reciprocate in kind. Every thought which finds abode in the human brain attracts elements after its kind, whether of destruction or construction, kindness or unkindness. You can no more concentrate your mind on hatred and dislike and expect a crop of the opposite brand than you can expect an acorn to develop into a poplar tree. It simply is not in harmony with the law of retaliation. Throughout the universe, everything in the form of matter gravitates to certain centers of attraction. People of similar intellect and tendencies are attracted to each other. The human mind forms affinities only with other minds which are harmonious and have similar tendencies. Therefore, the class of person which you attract to you will depend upon the tendencies of your own mind. You control those tendencies and can direct them along any line you choose, attracting to you any sort of person you wish. This is a law of nature. It is an immutable law, and it works whether we make conscious use of it or not. How great fortunes are made! Mr. Carnegie has passed away, leaving a fortune of several hundred millions of dollars after having given away many millions. Thousands of people there are who envied Carnegie his millions. Many more thousands there are who have puzzled their brains trying to think out some plan or scheme through which they could build up a fortune such as the one which Carnegie possessed. Mr. Carnegie accumulated his millions by selecting, combining, and managing other men's brains. He realized early in life that any undertaking such as the steel business required more talent than any one man possessed. He also realized that most industries and businesses require at least two types of men, one the caretaker and the other the promoter. Carnegie selected the men he wanted, organized them, directed them, and kept them enthusiastic and eager to render the greatest amount of service. He got them to cooperate with one another and with him. No man can build a fortune such as that which Carnegie controlled without the use of other men's brains. The amount which a single brain can produce, accumulate, and own acting independently of other brains is comparatively little, but the amount which one brain can accumulate and control when acting in harmony with other highly organized minds is practically unlimited. If you want to become wealthy, learn how to attract to you men and women who have that which you do not possess in the way of brain capacity. Many a business has grown sickly and finally passed into bankruptcy for no reason other than the fact that it was managed by men who had too much of one sort of talent and too little or none at all of the other necessary sorts. Business requires something more than capital with which to succeed. It requires well-balanced brains made up of the various shades and blendings of the caretaker and the promoter type. The greatest age in history. The present is the most wonderful age in the period of history of the human race. Wonderful not only in its mechanical development, but also in its mental development. We have not only discovered how to fly in the air, swim under the ocean, and talk around the earth, but we have discovered the cause of all this achievement, the human mind. The last 50 years have been the most active period in the world's history as far as discovery through science is concerned. The next 50 years probably will take us as far into the development of the human mind as the past 50 years have taken us into the mastery of physics and mere mechanical devices. Quit quarreling with your fellow men. The time and energy which we spend in striking back at those who anger us would make us independently wealthy if this great force were directed toward constructive effort, to building instead of tearing down. There is but one real way to punish a person who has wronged you, and that is by returning good for evil. Time spent in hatred not only is wasted, but it smothers the only worthwhile emotions of the human heart and renders a person useless for constructive work. Thoughts of hatred do not harm anyone except the person who indulges in them. Lucky is the person who has grown to be big enough and wise enough to rise above intolerance, selfishness, greed, and petty jealousies. The man or woman who can forgive and truly forget an injury by a fellow man is to be envied. Such souls rise to heights of happiness which most mortals never enjoy. Chapter 6. How to Build Self-Confidence. There are two great objects for which all humanity seems to be striving. One is to attain happiness, and the other is to accumulate material wealth, money. You will begin to see the importance of developing self-confidence when you stop to realize that neither of these two chief objects of life can be achieved without it. Try as hard as you wish, and you cannot be happy unless you believe in yourself. work with all the strength at your command, and you cannot accumulate more than barely enough to live on unless you believe in yourself. When you come into a full realization of this great truth, a new, vibrant feeling of inspiration will seize you, and you will become conscious of a tremendous amount of vitality and power which you did not know that you possessed before. We recommend that you purchase a copy of Emerson's essays and read Self-Reliance. It will fill you with new inspirations, enthusiasm, and determination. Then, after you have read the essay on self-reliance, read the one on compensation. In these two essays, you will find some remarkably helpful truths. In the development of self-confidence, one of the first steps you must take is to dispel forever the feeling that you cannot accomplish anything you undertake. Fear is the chief negative that stands between you and self-confidence, but we shall show you how to scientifically eliminate fear and develop courage in its place. Reposing in your brain is a sleeping genius which can never be aroused except through the exercise of self-confidence. When it is once aroused, you will be amazed at what you can accomplish. You will surprise all who knew you before your transformation took place. You will brush aside all obstacles and sweep on to victory, backed by an invisible force which recognizes no obstacles. Principles to build confidence. 1. I know that I have the ability to accomplish all that I undertake. I know that to succeed, I have only to establish this belief in myself and follow it with vigorous, aggressive action. I will establish it. 2. I realize that my thoughts eventually reproduce themselves in material form and substance and become real in the physical state. Therefore, I will concentrate upon the daily task of thinking of the person I intend to be and of drawing a mental picture of this person and transforming this picture into reality. I am studying with the firm intention of mastering the fundamental principles through which I may attract to me the desirable things of life. Through this study, I am becoming more self-reliant and more cheerful. I am developing more sympathy for my fellow men, and I am becoming stronger both mentally and physically. I am learning to smile, the smile that plays upon the heart as well as upon the lips. I am mastering and overpowering the habit of starting something that I do not finish. From this time forward, I will first plan all that I wish to do, making a clear mental picture of it, and then I will let nothing interfere with my plans until I have developed them into realities. I have clearly mapped out and planned the work that I intend to follow for the ensuing 5 years. I have set a price upon my services for each of the 5 years, a price that I intend to command through strict application of the principle of efficient, satisfactory service. I fully realize that genuine success will come only through strict application of the Golden Rule principles. I will therefore engage in no transaction which does not benefit alike all who participate in it. I will succeed by attracting to me the forces that I wish to use. I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve them. I will gain the friendship of my fellow men because of my kindness and my willingness to be a friend. I will eliminate from my mind fear by developing in its place courage. I will eliminate skepticism by developing faith. I will eliminate hatred and cynicism by developing love for humanity. I will learn to stand upon my feet and express myself in clear, concise, and simple language, and to speak with force and enthusiasm in a matter that will carry conviction. I will cause others to become interested in me, because I will first become interested in them. I will eliminate selfishness and develop in its place the spirit of service. Faith is the foundation upon which civilization rests. Nothing seems impossible when built upon faith as the cornerstone to your self-confidence building. Make use of it, and your building cannot fall. You will overcome all obstacles and tear down all resistance in accomplishing your purposes through this simple plan. Let no prejudices stand in the way of your using this plan. The great curse of the ages is fear or lack of self-confidence. With this evil removed, you will see yourself being rapidly transformed into a person of strength and initiative. You will see yourself breaking out of the ranks of that great mass which we call followers and moving up into the front row of that select few which we call leaders. Leadership only comes through supreme belief in self, and you know how to develop that belief. Emotionalize or vitalize your whole being with any well-fixed, definite desire, and immediately your personality becomes a magnet that will attract to you that object of that desire. To doubt is to remain in ignorance.